Welcome to the WiseTake DFS podcast, sponsored by the hottest team in the DFS industry, Daily Roto Sharks. If you want to be prepared for your DFS slates every night, you need to join the hashtag Sheet Squad movement. Check it out at dailyrotosharks.com now. I am your host, CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I am joined, as usual, by Fuego Steve, Steve Hillman. You can find him on Twitter at Fuego_Steve. And this is a very special episode for us. Not only is it a special weekend episode, something we don't normally do, but we have a very, very special guest. We've been excited. We've been telling you guys about it all week. We're joined by Wining247, a.k.a. Jack Hendrixson. You can find him on Twitter at JK Hendrixson with an X. Jack, how you doing today, man? It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad you threw the X in there, man. I usually get the CK, so thanks for throwing that out there. A lot of people usually mix that up.
My name is CK, so I'm conscious of those CKs. You know what I'm
saying? Oh, touche, man. Yeah, but I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's nice, man, to kind of branch out and do some other things, and you guys do a great job with your show. So met Steve, and it's pretty nice to be a part of this playoff podcast, man.
Much appreciated. Steve, Fuego, how you doing today, my man?
Great. Great to have Jack here, and looking forward to getting back into the NBA, even though it's only been 2 days. But though my baseball day was nice yesterday, so I can't complain.
Yes, it was. So I got to ask you, Fuego, the Jesse Chavez avatar. I think you got another 5 days of it. Is it staying or is it going?
It has to stay for up to a week. So the week mark, when the day the bet's over, I'll make the decision.
Okay, it sounds good. Real quick, so I just want to properly introduce Wining247, Jack here. Jack is a 7-time DFS Live Finalist. He took second in the FanDuel NBA Live Final in Miami this year, 2017. He's a contributor at one of the largest brands in the game, RotoGrinders. And he is a GPP only kind of guy. So it's obviously, we're extremely excited to have you here. Those credentials are quite impressive. And we're going to look to Jack to kind of tell us a little bit about how his approach changes. Like, what's the difference between NBA Playoff DFS and regular season NBA DFS? Or is there a difference? That's the kind of stuff we're going to get into today. We're super excited to have him on. Fuego, Fuego is one of our guys, so it's always a pleasure to have him on. Now, before we get started into that, I understand that you guys met for the first time at the final. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me a little bit, Fuego. Why don't you tell me a little bit from your side? You're a newcomer, right? And as far as the finals world go, this is your first live final. I'm sure that at the time, I know that you watch RotoGrinders and you listen to their stuff and everything like that, just like I do. And so you're meeting all these different personalities. Like, I know that you and Jack ended up hanging out with Jester, the winner, pretty much the whole night. How did that happen? Like, how'd you guys meet up? How'd you guys end up hanging out? What happened?
Yeah, so I was following Jack on Twitter, and you could see his handle right there. And he's great, if you direct message him, he'll respond. He'll help you with questions and answers, strategy, or player picks, and so we had become friendly beforehand. And so I was the very first person I saw at the Saturday night party was Jack, and I'm like, heck yeah! And we sat down and had a beer and then pretty much chatted most of Saturday evening, the first party. And, we have a lot of similarities, playing styles, and, GPPs, man, though I do joke with him, like I said last time, that he was born the year I graduated high school. So that's one thing we don't have in common. But, yeah, it was great. So, we hung out Saturday night, and then I got to sweat with them for most of the evening on Sunday. So, anybody, you can tweet Jack, he's a good follow, and he'll get back to you for sure.
That's awesome. Now, one thing that stood out to me, obviously, I talked to Fuego the night of the morning of the final. I talked to Fuego after the final. One of the things he spoke a lot of awesome things about you, and one of the things that I thought was the most interesting is we hear. I think everybody that's kind of out of the loop as far as like the DFS pros or the sharks or whatever you want to call them. And I feel like they all think there's some secrets, or like there's secrets that you guys know, or that there's a certain secret website where you get all this information, and there's a secret formula mathematically. And one of the things that Fuego told me is he tells me Jack is an open book. Anything you want to ask him about his strategy, he don't hide anything. He just kind of lets it all out. So what gives you that confidence? Because I feel like obviously you're good at what you do, and I feel like most people would want to protect that, but you're the opposite. You just kind of like, you're very honest, and you just kind of tell it how it is. So what is it like? What's your approach as far as your quote unquote secrets, if there are any?
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick rebuttal to Steve on that. And I definitely wanted to meet him there, and it was funny kind of running into him. So we were talking on Twitter how we had to meet, this and that, and just seeing him get his ticket kind of made my day when he won it, because I did want to meet him face to face. So that was awesome. But yeah, man, I mean, hit me up on Twitter, that type of thing. The way I put it too is like, Steve, especially me and him, we were the average type. Like we don't really do the crazy formulas and this and that. I'm just a game watcher. I love NBA. I love the sport, and just that kind of. I didn't have anything really, truly invested in it besides just watching the games and loving the sport, and just being an average guy, and just to come into it is awesome. And I'm here to help anyone, because I know when I first started, man, I wanted help. Like 3 years ago, I was just asking around. And to have someone that actually is in it now, just to show you that anybody can kind of really do it if you put your mind to it. And granted, I really, really kind of look at the lineups and this and that, and I really do study. Like I put a ton of time in, but most of that's game watching. I'll turn on the NBA and I'll watch the game if it ended, this and that. Rotations and stuff like that. So I'm a total game watcher.
Wow, that's actually that's an interesting perspective. So I'm
I want to add one. Can I add one?
Fuego, what you got?
Yeah, so I did want to add, and Jack makes a good point. So I got two quick things. At the finals, my buddy Matty Ice, who's going to be on the pod later in the week or next week, had his baseball draft and pretty much couldn't move because he had his computer plugged in and was just next to Jack the whole time. And he said afterward, yeah, he would just ask Jack a question and he would answer it. And same with Mick Jester. And I would say most of the people I met, it was just we're all trying to get better, I think. And I think, and this leads to my second point, I don't think any of the Twitter trolls are going to watch this, but if they happen to, it's funny because I thank the Siege when I win. I thank Tommy at Guru Elite when I win. I'll thank Dan Bach when I win. I'll thank Jeff Mans. Basically, anyone who's ever helped me, I'll thank. And I get these trolls that say, oh, you're part of the Elite Mafia and you're thanking Siege. And hey, Siege, he's sending the same thing to the Tommy. And I'm like, who has one teacher in their life? We've had 20 teachers in our lives. So I take something from here, I take something here. I'm going to thank whoever's helped me. And I just wanted to make the point that, whether I tweet directly to Jack, he's helped me. Whether I tweet directly to someone else, people have helped you. And I think that's one of my biggest things that's clicked over the past few months is just keep learning, and take the good stuff in, filter out the bad. And Jack was great. And like I said, he helped me, and McJester helped me, and my buddy. Just general theories and stuff. It's great.
That's awesome stuff, man. I know you mentioned to me a little bit ago about the troll thing, and that's a great point. Like obviously Jack is obviously from RotoGrinders. I don't have any I like RotoGrinders. You know why? Because they're good for the ecosystem. They're good for the industry. And I'm sure RotoGrinders, obviously, they had no problem with Jack coming on here because it's good for there you go. Fuego's got the gear, the swag right there. So it's like to me, it makes no sense to have these like quote unquote beefs in an industry that we're still building. The industry is not at its peak enough where there could be rivalries. We're all just trying to help each other. We're all doing it. We do it because we love it. Right? I was told by a very smart man once that if you enjoy what you do for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's the dream, right? That's what we're all after, right?
Yeah, man. And, one thing that I can, say, kind of what Steve was saying is, with the help and all that, two things. One, two brains are better than one, or two heads are better than one. And knowledge is power, man. So just if he's learning something from some guy, this and that, I mean, what's funny is, when I was plumbing, I would learn one thing from one guy, one thing from the other guy, this and that. Now I'm a licensed plumber. Like, you got to put it all together, and that's kind of Yeah, it's so true. So take knowledge from everyone. It's not just one guy. Everybody has good thinking and this and that, and that's how I'm here. I mean, I took info from Dan Bach. I took info from Siege. I mean, all those guys. Granted, I've been RotoGrinder since I started. All those guys, man, they all know what they're doing. It's just all of them are good at certain things. So you attack different, their strengths. You attack the strengths. You don't need to be going chasing other aspects of what they do. Just chase their strengths. If you like one pick, they pick. If you don't, then don't play the one that you don't like. Just don't be afraid to change it up. Don't get zoned in on stuff. Just go with the flow. Sometimes feeling is good, I feel like.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would definitely.
Sorry to get you off track there, Chris.
No. It's all. Hey, there is no track. Let me tell you something. We come on here, we just talk DFS. You know why? Because that's fun. It's fun to talk.
That's
DFS.
right.
I don't script nothing. I don't do nothing. We just come out here and talk. We just kind of get a feel for it and see how it goes. You know what I'm saying? So
that's one of the best things about the live finals with Jack and everyone there. You're just talking DFS. When I'm at home, people, even the guys that play it casually, get bored with me. But talk to my wife or to talk to someone who doesn't play, it's like whatever. But at the live final, everyone's just talking to you.
I was excited when you guys asked me. I'm like, and I was like, yeah, definitely. Like, why not get to talk some DFS? Like, a lot of people are on me too. Like, it's just the same thing. And to finally, it's just such a fun hobby, I guess. I don't know how you call it, but man, I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Absolutely. I'm with you guys. All right, so we are going to talk a little bit about basketball here. But before we even go into touch this Saturday slate that everybody's so anxious to hear Jack's opinion on, I wanted to ask you the big question. We'll see. Maybe you answer everything in one question, but okay, it's the playoffs. How does it differ? Like, how does your strategy, your outlook, are you looking for different things? The NBA playoffs, tell me how it's different from the regular season from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Like, obviously, the playoffs is a whole new ball game. Like, you do attack it differently, but you also do want to attack it kind of the same. I know it sounds, backwards, but a lot of people get zoned in that, if you have someone that's playing, how do I word this? If you have someone that's playing, a month ago NBA, and then they come in and they just basically are playing the names of the players that they're used to, their lineups aren't going to do as good. If you're, don't be afraid to kind of change it. The household names are going to be the high-owned players. So you got to really you can't be afraid to play Malcolm Brogdon. He's not well known. Everybody knows George Hill. Exactly. Like, I love him in this rookie year. I'm just throwing one guy out. You really got to find those guys in those mid-range prices and not be scared to play them just because you don't know their name. And then also at different positions, you got to find that value, man. I mean, that's what's huge. So let's say if you love the top guy at power forward, but at that position on a 4-game slate and power forward has the most value, just because you love that top guy, you might just need to go with those value guys and plug 2 of them in just so you can go up at like a small forward position. You can't get zoned in on one guy. Granted, you're talking to one of the most biased DFS players there is with Damian Lillard.
You're even wearing your Chicago Bulls outfit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't know if it was showing, but yeah, I love Damian Lillard and I love the Bulls. So, like, when the Bulls play, trust me, guys, whoever's listening, you'll look at my lineup and see biased plays. So, do as I say, not as I do, right? Exactly. But that's one thing. When I was on a podcast the other day with PML, we were talking about it. Like, on FanDuel, power forward's pretty stacked, and if you fall in love with certain guys at the top, but it's one of the more valued positions, and small forward has guys you want to pay up for, and it's like where else you gonna find that? So don't be afraid to differentiate at positions, even though you love that top guy. You have to just get those value plays in where you can get them, because there's not a lot in the playoffs on a 4-game slate. And that's what's going to, change it, because a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I want to watch my hometown team. Granted, that's how I am, and they're going to throw whoever they can in those lineups.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, you mentioned value. That brings me to my next question. Obviously, in the regular season, we're just waiting for injuries, right? That's a big way of how we find our value. We're waiting to hear injury news, see a guy that's priced to be a bench player, and he's now going to get a starter's minutes. And so in the NBA, I feel like, obviously, they don't, they have some rest, they have some time. Typically, teams rest their good players at the end of the season to keep them healthy. So in a situation where you're not expecting to really find too much last-minute news like usual, How do you find your value now?
Yeah, I mean, here's what's huge. All right. When we really get into game analysis, I feel like this is kind of where I'd be breaking it down. But there's a ton of picks that are going to be value for me that I'll be able to bring up. There's a lot of plays that are just people are going to really overlook. And I think, like, I'll point one out right away. Like a guy like, let's say, Jamal Crawford. Everyone's going to see his game log. They're going to see game log. But they're not going to be able to see what he's done in the playoffs. They're not going to be able to see off the bench, this type of thing. They're playing Utah. It's going to be a very grinded-out defensive game. They're going to see, 23 minutes, 30 minutes, 23 minutes. They're going to be, scared away. And, he's 3,600, and all I see is just dollar signs. So we know what he can bring off the bench, and that's the type of value you have to think of. He's one of the best scorers off the bench. Now it's game time. It's not a regular season game. They're going to do whatever they can to win. So he's a great tournament play in the aspect of you're just going to get him at low ownership with the upside that he provides, because basically at his age, they're kind of saving him for this type of game environment. So that Utah Clippers series, I'm so excited to watch. But when it comes to value, I'm so bad when I recommend value because, I think under 6K is value. Just because, it's hard to – I think if you're under 6K, it's pretty value. Prices, I'll just use some FanDuel prices. You got so many, power forwards in the 5K range that you can really take a look at. Even, LaMarcus Aldridge, you can really look at these guys for a while. So I consider that value on a playoff slate. If you can get a guy in the 5K range on the playoffs, and they're going to start and play 30 minutes, you can't ask much more than that, especially in that price range. Even if he gets outscored by the 8K guy by 10, that's a win. If you get 30 and he gets 40, that's a win. You got 3K left to spend at all these other top positions where these guys are basically studs, and you want to get as many studs as you can without, going crazy, I guess. And shooting guard is the place to there's tons of low plays at shooting guard. Point guard is this playoff, these series are going to be awesome. I'm so excited. It's going to be good tournaments as well. There's so many ways you can go.
No, that's definitely exciting. Here's a question. So for the playoffs, now you just mentioned that people are going to look at Crawford's game log and they'll probably see, he doesn't play enough minutes for me to like him. So you're somebody who watches these games, so it's not necessarily like you already have an idea because you've seen it before. You've seen what they're going to do. You kind of know the coaching tendencies, and obviously that's a huge advantage. So from your perspective, as far as player playing minutes, is LeBron James, for instance, now he's probably a bad example because he does play a lot of minutes, but say a star that typically doesn't play more than 32, 33 minutes. Do you expect that guy to get close to 40 minutes now that it's the playoffs?
Why don't we can, I think a perfect guy to kind of throw in that would be like a Gordon Hayward. He's kind of in that 30 to 36 minute range, right there in that. And I feel like he's going to get the minutes, but you also got to look at the teams. Utah is very team oriented. With Cleveland, we all know who's going to be taking those shots. I'm not taking anyone on the bench with Cleveland, but on Utah, you might be able to look at the bench. Gordon Hayward's not selfish enough. In the playoffs, you need guys that are selfish. You need guys that are going to be taking the shots. I want the ball in the fourth quarter. Get me the ball. I love Gordon Hayward. I'm not knocking on him. He's a great player. But I'm saying you need those players. So like LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard at point guard, there's so many guys on this slate. I want the guys that want the ball at the end of the game because these playoff series, Milwaukee, Toronto, I think that's going 6-7 games. Indiana, Cleveland, I can see that going 6. I don't know if it's going to go 7, but Utah, Clippers, that series is going 7. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. So I want the guys that want the ball.
Yep.
So with a LeBron James, if I can fit him in my lineup, he'll be in every lineup because he just wants to win. But the only thing that scares you with that is he has no problem coasting. So I'll take Kyrie, LeBron, and Love in the same lineup just because we know what they're going to bring to the table. They're not going to let their subs win the game. They're going to win the game.
That's a great point. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to add, that's one of the things that I like, and we'll talk about when we get there, but that's one of the things I like so much about Kawhi Leonard tomorrow is he is the star. He's the defensive star. He's the offensive star, and he's priced pretty low, very low, which we'll talk about. and you want that in the playoffs. And keep in mind that they'll coast. LeBron will coast for sure, but in the playoffs, these guys are playing max minutes. Usually, it's usually a close game. Obviously not always, but it's usually a close game, and they're going to play as many minutes as they can to get the win. And I like the Crawford call, by the way, because I was all over Redick, and I'm looking at it like, probably about the same.
We'll get there. We'll get.
I know, but I mix it up a little. Let's put it this way: I'll mix it up a little because I was like, that's some good points. And that was the other thing I was going to add. Look for veterans that, like, we'll talk about Vince Carter. I'm not exactly sure on him yet. We'll get there, but look for veterans that are going to play more minutes than they play during the regular season as well. That have playoff experience. That aren't going to necessarily be putting up 12 to 15 minutes. That they might get 20, 25 minutes tomorrow. So look for those guys as well, because in the beginning of the season, nobody really cares about that veteran with playoff experience. But once the playoffs come, it can make a big difference.
You got anything to add, Jack?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, the playoffs is. I was doing a podcast the other day, and we got in a pretty big argument. Me and probably my last log, and he's actually a really good follow. He's a really good follow on Twitter.
He's a great follow.
If you like. Yeah. You do. If you like getting annoyed, you can follow him. If you like information, you can follow. Any way you want to think of following this guy, you can. But actually, no, he's a good dude. He's very smart, and we got into the same argument that Steve just brought up. They like Joe Johnson. I'm sorry, I'm not playing Joe Johnson, but he makes great points basically with veteran. He's a veteran. He's been there. He's going to do it off the bench. This and that. He makes me think about it. So when it comes to the veterans, 100%. I think I'd rather play the Vince Carter over Joe Johnson, but I know PML is all over, playing the Joe Johnson just because of that reasoning that they've been there.
Yeah.
It's tough. And then in a sense you're chasing. I just know I have value plays that I think are really, really solid in this slate for tournaments, and I'm pretty pumped to get to the actual slate of it.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going to get there. I got one more question before we dive into the slate.
For sure.
Here's an example. So leading into my question, of course. So LeBron James is somebody, I think towards the end of the season, that people started finally catching on. Guys like you, guys like the Siege, even Fuego, I've heard say it. Target against LeBron. Target small forwards against LeBron. He's not playing defense. And it was true. He was giving up massive points to opposing small forwards. Now, but we know LeBron is just a physical specimen. We know a guy like he's a genetic freak. And I feel like if he really wants to play defense and he chooses not to coast, he can just turn it on. So is that something that you look for? Do you look to okay, maybe during the season, toward the end of the season, I targeted against LeBron. But this time things might be different because he's gonna step it up a notch. Does that go in your thought process at all?
There's actually I was gonna bring that up when we brought up the Indiana-Cleveland game. No, you're fine. It's so true. Like, coaches are huge. Like, me and PML were talking about it because we just had it's so funny. We just had one about this series, and we actually spent an hour and a half on just these 4 games. Like, there's so much to get into it. And the Indiana-Cleveland series, Tyronn Lue literally said, I have some, defensive tricks up his sleeve. So I really feel like Cleveland, they knew they were taking first or second. So they're going to be running a lot of defensive schemes that are way different than what any team in the NBA has played them are used to. So I feel like LeBron, almost in a sense, in that last month, didn't care about anything about defense, like you said, Chris. And, now you're getting into the playoffs. You're coming with one of the best players in the NBA, and he wants to win. I'm not scared of playing Paul George, but you make a good point with that. All I'm saying is just watch. I'm going to watch the first. I think they're going to run the ice defensive scheme. So I'm really interested to watch the first Cleveland game with their defense rotation and the way they're going to play their defense.
Okay. I like it. You know what? You guys got me excited enough. Let's go ahead and dive into and let's actually look at this Saturday slate. Fuego, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I personally have FanDuel pulled up. You guys can pull up whichever site is easiest for you to discuss. But let's start off with point guard here. And Jack, I want you to start us off.
I got you hooked on FanDuel, didn't I, Chris?
You did. You definitely did. I played DraftKings for a while, but I gotta say, I find I know there's no secret. Okay, FanDuel's pricing is a little more lenient. So just because the pricing is more lenient, it's more lenient for everybody. So it doesn't necessarily give you an advantage. It just it just makes you think differently. And I feel like coming from DraftKings, where they force you to find those plays that are ugly, and FanDuel, you're never forced to. So I do see a little bit of an edge as far as I got guys. I feel like I have guys like everybody can afford to pay up for LeBron, but maybe I have somebody else that he's cheap on FanDuel and nobody's going to pay him just because they could afford LeBron. So I do think there's a small edge. So yes, Fuego, you got me hooked on FanDuel. I got to admit that. But Jack, tell me, when you're looking at this point guard, you're looking at point guards here. What do you see?
If we're going just position by position, point guard wise, I gotta get to kind of.
Well, you know what? I tell you what. We can go game by game. There's only 4 games. We could do it. We do it for baseball. So if you want to, let's do that. Let's start off with Indiana.
Whatever Jack wants, Jack gets.
Whatever Jack wants, Jack gets. That's right. So we're gonna go game by game now instead. Indiana versus Cleveland.
All right. I love that. For people that aren't really familiar with the ice defensive scheme, it's really going to open up shots for the opposing. So basically, a guy that I'd be looking at would be a Paul George or a Miles Turner. They're going to get shots in an ice defensive scheme because they're basically attacking the point guard as much as they can. So they're, in a sense, kind of like doubling the point guard off like a pick and roll. So you're going to get Miles Turner with shots. That sense. Jeff Teague is out of play for me. I think a lot of people are going to play Jeff Teague as much as they can. His price is right, this and that. His usage is just going down for me, like big time, and it just scares me. So the guy that I'm really looking at, I don't like his price, but at point guard in this game is Kyrie Irving. I think on DraftKings, he's a little bit more priced right, but I can't pay $9K for him on FanDuel. That's a tough pill to swallow. But the guys that you're looking at for is catch and shoot guys on the Pacers. And if I had to pick 2, it would be tough because CJ Miles is not starting. So catch and shoot guys, I would.
What do you think of Thaddeus Young?
Yeah, he definitely could. If I had to pick one, though, I would say who's good in open space because you're going to hit these guys. So, Monte Ellis is pretty good in open space. But my play on the Pacers is Lance Stevenson at shooting guard because of that ice defense. When he comes in, that type of thing, he's going to be in LeBron. We all know the history of the whisper and that type of thing. But his price is just right, and I think he's going to get touted higher. I was talking with people with ownership. But basically, you want these guys that can catch and shoot. CJ Miles ain't going to get the time. So the way I see it is if guys get open court. So you can even put Monte Ellis in there because if he's having a good game, they'll keep him in. Teams are going to play the player that's hot. So if I play a lot of Lance Stevenson, I'm going to have to hedge with some Monte Ellis. But in the guard spots for Indiana, it is Lance Stevenson for me.
That's very interesting. Fuego, what do you think?
That's a great point. He is the 3rd highest ranked shooting guard in my model behind DeRozan and the Greek Freak. So that's saying something. He's ahead of Redick and all the other shooting guards on the slate, which, we always talk about paying down for shooting guard. We can definitely do it here, but they're not my favorite pay down shooting guards, unfortunately. But Stevenson is one. He's Jack makes great points there, and I do like him. If we took Stevenson and then Redick or like Crawford, like he said before, you can really pay up at every other spot. If you take 2 shooting guards, that are going to total 7,000. So I like that call a lot, and I do like Thad. I like Thad Young. I like Miles Turner. I like Paul George. I like all those guys. And I probably have a little more love for Teague just because on short slates, I don't mind mixing in all the point guards. Like, for example, I'm not saying he's going to be my number 1 point guard, but if it's a short slate and let's say I really like my core lineup, I'll mix in a couple point guards or things like that. So I like him probably a little bit better than Jack does.
Yeah, give me an argument on Teague. I want to start liking him because I love his price, man.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, well, the thing with Teague is it's the playoffs. So the problem is he never hits that 40-point game on FanDuel. It's like, we want 40. Where's the 40-point game? But with his highs of 37s, 38s, 39s, maybe this is it. If it's a back-and-forth game that he can get to that 40. And if he could get to that 40 at 7, that would be a pretty good return. Now, obviously, I'm not saying he's going to, but put it this way: we're going to talk about some of the other point guards I like, but I don't love Irving. Again, I would probably play him, but I don't love Irving. So I think that's one reason I think Teague's more in play. It's because of the $7,000 price tag. And when you're doing, when I was creating lineups before, there were some that he kind of just fell in there.
I'm gonna ask one question real quick. What if I told you Kyrie Irving's price on DraftKings was $7,800?
What?
Yeah.
And he's 9,000. See, yeah, like maybe I won't play him tomorrow. Yeah. Wow. Maybe I'll play a little DraftKings.
Jeff Teague is 7-3 on DK and Kyrie is 7-8. I agree with you 100%. I cannot play Kyrie Irving on FanDuel. Wow. It's just 7-8 is a joke. I feel like they're just not ready. It's almost like FanDuel is not kind of. I mean, FanDuel's pricing is kind of right. Like it really is. DraftKings is the one that's lacking here, which is it's almost like polar opposites.
Normally it is the other way around, right?
Yeah, Chris, we got any take on it, or what do you feel?
Well, not from an NBA. I'm gonna be honest. I've been engulfed in MLB ever since we switched. We've been doing all the things. But one thing that stands out to me, just based off of what both of you said. So Fuego seems to like it could be regardless of whether it's price or not. I think Fuego seems to like Teague more, and you seem to like Irving. And I think what's interesting is hearing your logic behind Irving, because on FanDuel Teague is going to be more chalky, I would imagine, because you could still play Chris Paul, you could still play Kyle Lowry for much cheaper than Kyrie Irving at 9K. So my thing is, you mentioned that the defensive schemes might change for Cleveland, and I think that's interesting because I know for me, when I was playing during the regular season, I learned you target point guards against Cleveland because they don't play defense, and you don't target bigs against them because for some reason the centers just couldn't handle it down low. They were pretty good at closing down on the rim. But it sounds like if what you're saying is correct, and they're going to switch to that ice type of defense, then in that case, I feel like everybody's going to, nobody's going to know that. They're going to keep thinking, we're going to play T because we always play point guards against Kai, and we're not going to play Miles Turner because we never play centers against Cleveland. And I feel like people are going to still follow those rules. So just from hearing you two speak about it, it definitely gives me some insight and perspective as to I'm going off what I thought originally and what I think now. And I think that's going to be interesting because people are going to go with what they know. And what they know is during the season, you play Teague against Kyrie and you don't play Miles Turner. And yet right off the bat, Jack, you mentioned you're not on Teague. You like Kyrie a lot more, and you're interested in Miles Turner. So I think that's interesting. I don't have a take. I just think that's interesting, something to point out for the listeners there, because I think that's a great example of how the atmosphere and how your strategy has to change when it's the playoffs. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, Fuego brought up some great points on Teague, and it's tough. I'm being biased with Teague. Like I said, two heads are better than one. I'll take a look at him. I feel like people are going to really kind of shift to Teague just because of his price. Not positive on it, but if I had to get to the small forward position, I mean, Paul George, even at 10K, I feel like he's just a solid play.
Yeah,
I mean,
I want to. Well, I do like Paul George. He has been Siege has not liked Paul George all year, and
that hasn't gone well for him.
Yeah, right, and that's the thing, man. When you just look at some of the game logs, 50, 41, 52, 40, 52, 72. I mean, these are big time numbers, and he's never the highest price. So compared to James, he's $1,000 cheaper than James. He's compared to the Greek Freak, he's $400 cheaper. So he has those ceilings that all these guys have, and I have no problem firing him up tomorrow. But I did want to touch on Miles Turner. If you look at his last 3 game logs, he's had 32 minutes, 28 minutes, and 30 minutes, and he's put up 41, 43, and 38 FanDuel points. So I'm not sure exactly, Jack, you might have a better idea what happened the past 3 games, but he has gone off the past 3 games, and I'm curious if that continues. And it's not like it's the first time he's done that this year. He has these stretches where he does that, and I'm curious to know whether, Jack, you think that's going to continue, because if so, at 6,900, under 7,000, you tell me he's going to get 35, 40 points, fire me up.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, his last couple games have been great. The only thing that kills, we'll get to the game, but there's a center that just like is going to be locked for me right in that price range. His price also on DraftKings.
Chicago's not playing.
Touche. No, you'll hear it. I'll give you my reason. He's only 6'5". I mean, like if you look at it, he's been playing great. 100% agree. I think he's going to get a lot of kind of open 15, 18 footers, so that's huge for him. If you look too, though, the only thing that if I can give you a counter argument, would be Orlando, Philly, Atlanta without their bigs is kind of like his last three. So he's played basically, three teams that kind of centers you would expect to do good. But if Cleveland rolls out a different defensive scheme, which Tyronn Lue, that's you don't know with coaches nowadays in the NBA. I definitely he's in play. You're crazy to think he's not just because he has such upside.
I'm looking right now at his game logs, like Fuego said, and I'm like, oh wow, people are going to see this 41.6, 43.1. But then I'm looking, I see April 2nd against Cleveland in 47 minutes. He got 18.6 fantasy points in 47. I don't think anybody's going to play Miles Turner if they see that. I don't.
I mean, yeah, that's a great point, and I hope.
How do that? Ugh.
That's what I'm saying.
I think a lot of people are going to play him, though. I think he's going to be higher. I mean, I can't wait for ownership projections to come out. But kind of to get to a different guy, a guy that I really like in this matchup is Kevin Love.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think he got the rest. He's playing. You're going to have Thad Young defending him. He's undersized. It's just that Kevin Love is just in a great spot. I think when it comes to Kevin Love, LeBron, and Irving, like if I can get all three of those guys on the team, I would, because this game, believe it or not, out of the 4 games, it's the highest total. And it's not even that high of a total too, which is kind of the funny part. I'd say it's 212, and like the only other game is 200. So that really stands out to me. And if this game stays close, those 3 are going to do a lot.
Oh yeah,
totally.
It definitely goes back to what you were saying about like selfish players and about so they'll let the bench players come off the bench during the season. They got no problem resting, but when it's playoff time, the big 3 is going to want the attention. They're going to want the ball, and they're going to want to be the reason that they win if they win.
Yeah, 100% for sure.
Gotcha.
Exactly. I just want to touch. I completely agree on that point. I think all 3, and that's the point. It is the playoffs, so. Love his minutes. They've been ticking up the past 4 games. But since he's come back from injury, he seems to be playing very well. And, he's getting 38, 34, 35, 35, 49, 30, all these 30 points in the regular season. And I think that can get ticked up a little bit. I think the fact that it's going to be it's a high total, it should be a closer game, or at least for the most part. And he's one of the big 3 on their team, so I think he absolutely has that ceiling for sure of 40 plus FanDuel points, which is 5 to 6x, which is fine.
Yeah. If you think about it too, you're gonna probably, if I was a gambling man, you're probably gonna get him at half the ownership of Blake Griffin.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Sign me up for that.
That's a great point. Are there any other plays you guys like from this game, or should we move on?
Jack, can you touch on LeBron for one more second?
Yeah. That's a great idea, Fuego.
What's his? I mean, either a projection, or is he gonna get? What's his odds of getting 60 FanDuel points? Like, what are you feeling on LeBron?
All right, LeBron James is one of those players that I feel like when anybody talks, like Chris Brenton, this guy is a freak of nature. He can do what he wants when he wants. He's been to 6 finals for a reason. If this game at all, if anyone who's listening thinks this game is going to be tight, LeBron is going to be the guy that kind of separates it. So I think there's just no way he doesn't break. At 11,000 on FanDuel, it's such they priced him right, and I'm glad about it because everyone's going to be chasing it. In his first playoff, if the game is within, if he plays in the 4th quarter, is the best way to put it. I don't see how he doesn't break 50 fantasy points. I mean, that's just from a bystander watching all these games. Like he does everything. He does it. if he scores 20 points, he can still hit 50 fantasy points with ease. So 20 raw points, that is.
Sure.
So, and then the only other guy would LeBron. If you can get LeBron in your lineup, everyone who's listening, get him in your lineup because he's LeBron James. There's nothing else to say. One other guy I'll be looking at in the tournament. Actually, he's two. At shooting guard, J.R. Smith, I think, is definitely a guy you can look at. He's the type of guy that kind of shows up in these playoff spots. He's not afraid to shoot. We all know that. He shoots better contested. He's just a great tournament player. So whenever I make recommendations, let's make sure they're tournament plays. And then Tristan Thompson at 4,700 against Miles Turner. I mean, that's a pretty, if you're paying down at center, that's where I'm going just because he's that guy that's, he'll get you his rebounds, this and that. He's going to get some alley-oops, that type of thing. He's not going to go get you 45 points, but he'll hit that 30, 35, and I have no problem with that if I'm looking, for other plays elsewhere.
That's a great point. Fuego, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to ask him about Thompson. My only thing with Thompson is we're going to talk about some people in a second that I might like just a little bit better, but he is the cheapest center that I would play. Let's put it that way, at only 4.7 on FanDuel. The problem is I don't see him getting 6x. I could see him getting 5x. I just don't see the 6x, which, that doesn't stop me from playing someone, for example. But I think there's a couple other centers with a little higher ceiling, but I do like him in this spot. And Jack talked about, I think centers, but whether it was on the pod or before the pod, centers are key on FanDuel. Whether it's the right value guy and he hits value, whether it's the high price guy who smashes, you only get one shot on FanDuel, so you got to make it. You got to make it count. And he would be in play, just not quite as much as I like a few guys coming up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, you got it. Center is, if you don't nail center, you might as well just turn the TV off. Like, center on FanDuel is the most important position.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually heard you. I know you were both on that. Man, I can never. Fuego, what's the name of it? I can never remember it. With the movie,
Perfect Lineup.
Perfect Lineup.
Yeah,
you were both on the Perfect Lineup podcast. I think you were a guest apart. Like, it was Fuego, and then I think you were back. I know, Jack, you've been on multiple times. I think you went back to them, and I did listen to it, and I heard you say that, and that was one of the things that stood out to me on FanDuel that I think that maybe people don't realize. Like, a huge difference between DraftKings and FanDuel is on DraftKings you can potentially play at least two centers, sometimes three because of multi-eligibility and utility. On FanDuel you get one, and if you miss, it's going to be a long night. You mentioned that, and I thought that was a great point for sure.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And the way I think of it too is, you like you said, you have one. So let's say if the chalky center you don't love, don't be afraid to fade that chalky center, because man, if he's 50% owned and he busts, like, they're done. Like, yeah. So that's huge. Center is why I've won on FanDuel all my big tournaments. Just to put that out there, center is so key.
There you have it. One of Jack's not so secret secrets.
Hey, right. I'm here for everyone, man. I'm here. I love people that, I love to see people win and that type of thing. So definitely tweet out me if you ever win or anything like that. I always love to see it.
Absolutely.
I played Rondé Hollis Jefferson the other night, and you probably would have been mad, but he went off.
I understand. Trust me, I do. He finally got his minutes, so.
Yeah, that's the key, man. That's the problem with Brooklyn. You never know. It could be anyone one night getting the minutes. And Jack's rule, just Lopez, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't have to worry about them tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm ready to go on the next game if you guys are.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, we got the Milwaukee Bucks at the Toronto Raptors. So right off the bat, I'm going to ask you a question right off the bat. How much do you take into account, like, Malcolm Brogdon? Nothing against him. I watched him at Virginia. I think he's a talented player. I think his defense in the beginning of the season was a little better than what we saw at the end of the season. But it's a rookie. You got a rookie in a playoff atmosphere who's probably going to be matched up. And now they could go with Dellavedova because he's got more experience. But I would imagine that Brogdon's still going to see the floor a decent amount as long as he's not doing that bad. Lowry, a veteran of the game, guy's been to the playoffs multiple times, going up against a rookie potentially in Malcolm Brogdon. What are your thoughts on as far as veterans versus rookies, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Like that. That's a great point. Rookies, playoffs are a lot harder, especially going to Jurassic Park, like at Toronto. That's tough, man. Like you're going into that's a tough environment for sure. Malcolm Brown's going to be a good point guard for many years to come. I love this kid. He looks like just a good ball player, knows the game. If you kind of believe in that, what would that be called? Narrative Street. Then definitely don't play him because he's in every environment and everything points that way. But as of watching him and the type of player he is and the confidence that Jason Kidd has in him, I have actually no fear playing him at 5,600 against Kyle Lowry because Kyle Lowry's been trying to just do everything. So on the defensive end, like if you watch this guy in a game, like he runs everywhere. He's just all over the court. Like he just runs offensively off picks. Like that's why, with the Bucks, because they run the double off the pick as well. So it's funny going to the Bucks too. So if whatever Thon Maker, whoever's in, or if Kyle Lowry and Valanciunas run a pick, the Bucks will double Kyle Lowry, but he has no problem hitting Valanciunas and cutting back door, just how much he moves on the offensive end. So that being said, Brogdon and Lowry are just in very sneaky good spots.
That's interesting. Fuego, what do you think about that?
I'm going to agree again on this one. It's the price point for me for sure. So if you're playing, we're going to talk about Chris Paul, or if you are playing Lowry, or you're playing any of the high price point guards, and we want to get some of these other high price players, LeBron, Brogdon is where I'm going to probably have a lot of ownership. He's only 5,600. I'm not as worried about the rookie stuff. These guys have been playing their whole lives and in big stages. And does it affect them? Sure, it can. Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. But I'm a GPP player, so I look at the ceiling, man. I hardly even ever look at floors unless it's like the last guy who I think is going to make my lineup and I need him to get that 20 points or something. I hardly ever look at floors. So in my mind, he's got at 5.6. He's a guy that can get, 6. He could get 33. He could get 34. And I definitely think he could get 5 times value. So I like him quite a bit. But the guys that I really like are at shooting guard and small forward for Milwaukee. The Greek Freak. I always love him. And I also like Middleton at small forward. Another price right kind of thing. The Freak, I think, definitely has one of the, if not the highest ceiling on the slate. I don't know. What do you think about those guys, Jack?
Oh, Steve, I mean, dead on with the Freak. I mean, I think Milwaukee can win the series. It's not going to be easy, but they can win the series. And if they have any chance, like you said, like Greek Freak, man, it's going to be him. So if I'm going to have any exposure to this slate, you got to have some of him because he has such a high ceiling. I mean, this guy is literally a freak. His name is exactly what he is. So if you can get this 10-4 player at this position, he is going to be high owned, but don't be afraid to go contrarian in spots, and don't be afraid to go chalky in spots. It's sometimes if you feel like he's going to play good, play him. And Greek Freak is one of those guys that I'm going to have probably the most. I'm just going to have as much as exposure to him as I can, even as much as to LeBron. Like Greek Freak is in a great spot. As for Chris Middleton, I would probably be a little bit different on FanDuel just because I love these top guys. If you can tell me you're going to get Kawhi at 8-3, and I can find a way to get LeBron in, like I'm going to do everything I can to get those top guys up there. And Middleton just seems a little scary to me at that 5'9". I feel like his ceiling is a little worrisome. So I don't disagree, but I wouldn't completely agree with Middleton, but I don't hate him.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, especially if we like Antetokounmpo, whose name I can usually say pretty well. Antetokounmpo. So if you like him and you like the ceiling, it's harder to like Middleton, for example, just because of the ceiling. Just like you said, he does not hit 6x usually, like I talked about before. Yeah, the Freak for sure is just in a great spot. And me and Chris have talked about in the past. Now, lots of times we refer to when I'm talking about 2 or 3 game slates, I say you have to have the highest raw score. 4 games, you may not necessarily have to have the highest raw score, but it doesn't hurt. And I think he could be the highest raw scorer on the slate tomorrow. And in most lineups that I was messing around with before, I was squeezing him in there. And you can go, unless you're doing 2 cheap shooting guards and loading up elsewhere, you put Freak in, you put a cheap shooting guard, and go from there. Yeah, no,
100%. And another thing that we kind of we didn't talk about it much, obviously, with talking about these guys, but DeMar's price on FanDuel is it is appetizing.
It's disrespectful, isn't it?
Yeah, 8.3. I mean, I'm not sure his price on DK, but 8.3 for DeMar DeRozan, and he's 8K on DraftKings. Oh no. Yeah, I think his price, when you think of point per dollar, that's something that really attacks me. You got, Greek is 2K higher. DeRozan is 8.3. He easily has the same point per dollar at the same price, which is crazy. DeMar just had a crazy opening to the season. It's just, it's going to be like a transfer game with Toronto. You're going to get a Lowry game. You're going to get DeRozan game. That's kind of how they've been in the playoffs. So you got to have some exposure to DeRozan at this price, because if he goes off, we're all going to be kicking ourselves in the butt, wishing we played this guy.
That's a great point. Fuego, what do you think about DeRozan?
Yeah, he's another one at that price. I know Lowry was out, but Lowry how long's Lowry been back?
I think 3 games, but I want to say he was kind of full minutes.
Okay. He was, with Lowry out, he was up to 9.3 at times, and he's at 8.3 now. So that's $1,000 less, and we've seen him get his ceiling with Lowry. You may not get both their ceilings in the same game, but we've seen DeRozan produce at an extremely high level with Lowry on the court. And Jack makes a great point, because he's another one of those guys that he could be the highest raw point total scorer on the slate. So yeah, he could throw up 40 actual points or 38 actual points and end up being extremely high. So I do like him in this spot. If one thing I'll do is, if you look at the slate, you have the Freak at 10.4, you have DeRozan at 8.3, and then you drop all the way down to JJ Redick at 4.4. So there's no middle ground shooting guards, which we don't like to pay for anyway. But one thing I'll do is I'll either pay up at both shooting guard spots, or I'll pay down at both, or I split them. And this is a great spot. If you can get DeRozan and the Freak in, it would be, I think, a contrarian play.
Yeah, especially fitting both those guys in, and because a lot of people are, as I brought up earlier, if you think it's the easiest position to punt at, then a lot of people are going to punt at it, because that's just how it is nowadays. If you see the low value, that's where everyone's going to go. So if we can, Giannis is still going to be high owned, but I think DeRozan's that guy that we can get at that ownership that can actually really help us in tournaments.
Oh, I just made it.
What was that?
I just made a quick lineup with Freak, DeRozan, and Leonard. Ooh, looks good.
Oh, that's interesting. It's funny how you guys talk about DeRozan. And what I'm thinking right now, I know towards the end of the season, Milwaukee's defense kind of lacked. Against point guards, specifically. In the beginning of the season, they were very good against point guards. And so I feel like it's a playoff atmosphere. Kid is a point guard himself, so he's going to do whatever he can to make sure that his guys step up their game, whether it's playing Dellavedova or Brogdon. So essentially, if they step it up, if they change some things around, if they go back to playing defense well, that can sort of funnel everything to DeRozan, because it's going to be like, I feel like, yeah, they could both go off, of course. But I think if they're going to ramp up the defense against Lowry, then DeRozan's just going to kind of chuck, right? He's just do what he does, and that's just chuck shots, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his mid-range, man, talk about one of the best, just mid-range shooters in the game, period. So, like you said, yeah, if you can, DeRozan is a very sneaky, a lot of people in his price, it's just so sweet. And there's another guy, too, his price, that is really interesting to me, and I'd like to get both your guys' take on it, and that's Serge Ibaka, 5'3". I feel like he can really get a lot more usage now that it's the playoff time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And that's one of the guys, actually, that could be the veteran. I don't know. I'm not up on Ibaka's playoff career, but he is a more of a veteran. He's not a rookie player, and he's someone whose usage, was the regular season, whatever. But we saw some of his ceiling games, especially when Lowry's out. He put up 45 and 35 2 nights in a row, maybe a month ago or something. So he has the ceiling for sure, and at only 5.3. If he puts up a 30 spot, you'll be loving that. And I definitely think he's in play at that price at power forward, because we're trying to pay up for shooting guard. We're trying to pay up at some of these other positions. This might be a perfect mid-tier spot. And I think Jack already touched on, or either before, that we really like these guys in this, 4 to 6 range at power forward, and he's one of them I do like for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think Ibaka is very interesting, especially not that Jabari Parker is the best defense, but at least Jabari Parker was very aggressive, and so we're not going to have him here, obviously. So I think that kind of leaves Ibaka kind of like in an offensive no man's land. There's really nobody there to defensively to stop him from doing what he wants. And on the other end, like you said, he's got playoff experience. He's a big, strong dude. And I feel like, against this Milwaukee team, he strikes me as a guy that kind of knows what to do in these situations. A guy that maybe has a couple of tricks up his sleeves to pull out on these younger guys. And I would not be surprised to see Ibaka pull that out and kind of show the Raptors that they made the right choice in trading for him.
Hey, my model just updated with its projected ownerships. Who did you want to know before, Jack? Do you remember?
Oh, man, Stevenson, I think it was.
Yeah.
Was it Lance Stevenson?
I don't know.
According to Fantasy Labs, 5 to 8.
Percent?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to remember also something, and I want to hear your opinion actually, Jack, and you too, Fuego. So just like what I just said, I said I was heavy into basketball during the season, but as soon as baseball came on, I immediately switched to baseball because I find it a little tougher to play basketball at this later on in the season when games don't matter for everybody. So I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of did the same thing. I feel there's a lot of people who just focus on baseball, and so now it's NBA playoffs, and they're not in the loop. They don't know what's going on. They haven't been paying attention. They have no clue. Do you think that's something that that players like you guys who have consistently played continuously can take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on. Like that, exactly. So they're to come in, the household names, they're going to plug in their lineups, this and that. No one's going to see the minutes that he's been getting kind of behind the scenes and basically the interviews he's been talking about LeBron James. I guess like someone called him, saying, "You ready for this?" And he's like, "I'm born ready." And like he's pumped. He is pumped for this series, Lance Stevenson. So I just I know we're backtracking a little bit, but yeah, you make a great point, Chris. To the point, everyone's kind of be focused on baseball now. They see playoffs coming, and they're just not going to be kind of researched and ready. So that's huge.
Interesting. Well, what other plays do we like from this game? We got Monroe. Are his minutes going to be different now that it's a playoff atmosphere? What else are we doing here?
Yeah, one guy that's pretty interesting. I don't know if I'll get the boot button on this one, but Jonas Valanciunas at 5'5". People don't realize what he did last playoffs, and even if he gets 25 minutes, this guy last playoffs was talked about as like the first round all-star, or they were talking about him as the best player in the actual entire playoffs, and he was playing hurt with a sprained ankle. So I don't know if Dwayne Casey's going to unlock him, because you can't play Ibaka with Valanciunas because it really hurts your upside. But man, Valanciunas is very, very sneaky, and a lot of people, if they watched last year's playoffs, man, he went off. I mean, he just had a good, first round and that type of thing. So that's a guy I'm definitely looking at. And I think he can be really, really sneaky.
What do you think about that, Fuego?
We already talked about us being alike. This might not be the most controversial podcast, I'll tell you that. Yeah, I like him, and I like him. I was going to ask him, Jack, about him. He's a guy at 5.5. He's at that price where, he can get that 6. 5.5 times 6 is 33. He absolutely could get 33 FanDuel points. He absolutely can. And that's what I'm looking at. And I'm looking at that ceiling. And he is, at center. We haven't touched on the centers I really like, though. I did like Turner in the last game. But there's, I can absolutely play him at 5.5. we're trying to get in. You want to use the strategy where you're taking the Greek and DeRozan at shooting guard. You want to take that strategy. You're going to need to save elsewhere, and he's got the ceiling for me at that price.
Yeah, I personally, not necessarily for the slate, because I'm kind of leaving it up to you guys to break it down, but I love Valanciunas. I played him all year. Even when his minutes got cut, I couldn't get it through my head, and he never really let me down that bad. Maybe 1 or 2 games where he put up 18 or 20, but I feel like he always came through for me, man. I got a lot of love for the guy. And a lot of people noticed his minutes were cut a little bit, but like you said, Jack, if it's the playoffs, so if a guy is playing well, if something is working, they're going to leave him out there. So if Valanciunas is playing well, they're going to leave him out there, and they're going to let him do his thing. So I love Valanciunas. I think he's a great pump play.
Yeah, man. It's funny. You said you love him. The reason I'm here today is because of him, man. He's literally the reason. Yeah, he was my first big win. He was the most he was 0.9% owned on my first lineup that I ever hit big on. So thank you, Valanciunas. I'll play you tomorrow just because of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I played Saric in the live final because he was in my queue, and I liked him. He was in my queue win. So that's what happens at DFS. You get players you like, you get players you hate. It's one of the hardest things to do, actually, especially go back to the players that have burned you. That's one of the hardest things to do because you don't want to go back to that player, but you got to kind of forget about it. And the same thing, I will play people that if it's close, I'm going with the guy that I like or who won me that money that one time, So no doubt about that.
Yeah, it almost feels like you owe him type thing,
Dude, I played Devontae Adams several times where I probably should not have after he qualified me for the King of the Beach NFL tournament for DraftKings. So there was a couple of games I played Devontae Adams and I'm like, it probably wasn't the best play, but he was my man. He was my man.
Loving it. Who else do we like from this game?
I mean, you could take a look at Greg Monroe, but other than that, I think I'm probably ready to get to that Memphis San Antonio. If you guys are.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep. I'm not in love with Monroe either.
Okay, sounds good to me. Memphis and San Antonio, as you mentioned. Jack, start us off. What are we looking at first here? It's gonna be. This is probably one of the more uglier series, but it's still going to be a good series because they played last year, and that was the Memphis B squad because everyone's. I think Jordan Farmar started last year, so it's just poor Memphis didn't have anyone, so it'll be interesting to see this. I think Conley, I'd rank him over Teague on FanDuel at 7-2. I really do like him. I think a lot of people are going to really, really overlook Tony Parker at that 4-1 price tag. These two guys against each other. I think you're going to get them at low ownership. And, as we were kind of saying, if you can get these guys that can play some minutes, Tony Parker's only 4-1. The only thing that scares me is there's just so many good point guards. And if you're willing to punt at the point guard position, I think he's really a valid punt. If you're going to play a lot of them, you do got to hedge with some Patty Mills so you don't get completely burnt. But I would have to say Mike Conley is high on my list of point guards. Fuego, what do you think?
So what do you think Fantasy Labs has Parker's projected ownership at? Now, obviously, they're always higher. It's a 4-game slate, but what would you guess Parker's projected on Labs?
He's going to be high. Is it going to be – I was going to say, under 10.
They have him projected at 21 to 25% ownership.
Is that DraftKings or FanDuel?
FanDuel. And I think it's the price point. And veterans in the playoffs. I touched on it before, and – Fantasy Labs isn't always right. Chris Giamino, who does a great job at RotoGrinders with ownership percentages, they're not always right, but they have an idea. And I think maybe the public is aware that Tony Parker is if this is close, he is the playoff veteran. His price at 4.1 is just so appealing to me because of all the other players I want to get in. And at point guard at 4.1, 4 times 6 is what, 24? I mean, you're telling me he can't get 6. Absolutely he could get 6 times value now. And this is another guy during the regular season who it's the regular season. He's a old man in basketball terms, and it's not as old as me, but in basketball, he's an old man. So they rest. It's the Spurs. So I think he could. I think he's in a really good spot. Let's put it that way. And I'm hoping the ownership percentage is lower than 20%. But it's a 4-game slate. They're all going to be high owned.
Yeah, I hope as well. I mean, and when it comes to like, if you're going to play a lot of Tony Parker, you just have to head with some Patty Mills just off the bench. He's been great in playoffs as well. At the shooting guard position, man, there's just no one that stands out to me. I'll stop if anyone disagrees or.
Keep going.
All right. I don't really like that shooting guard position for them. I think you can get a lot of different plays. Small forward, when you get Kawhi at 8'3" on FanDuel, that's crazy. I mean, the teams that I've put together. What's that?
Highway robbery.
Yeah, it. When I saw his price, it's like, even if it is against Memphis, it's tough. So that's pretty close to a lock for me in most of my lineups, just because we all know what he's capable of. Granted, we don't know what type of game this is going to run into. Do one of these teams kill each other? Because the over/under is 191. It's pretty atrocious. And San Antonio is favored by 9. So that scares you a little bit with that low total. But with the injuries to Tony Allen, who's supposedly going to be out this whole series, I like me some Vince Carter.
Ooh, VC.
Yep.
The whole series, Tony Allen's supposedly out.
Oh, wow. That's big news. So you see that's a little bit of information that I haven't been into the NBA. I've been in MLB mode. I had no idea that he wasn't going to be here for the playoffs. So that goes to show there's probably a bunch of people out there who had no idea until Jack just told them.
Well, that upgrades Kawhi Leonard, too, because, they were going to put Tony Allen on Kawhi. So that really upgrades him. It's just defense is just unbelievable. So in this matchup, it's Kawhi and a little bit of Vince Carter, as Steve said. Veterans show up in the playoffs. This guy doesn't age. Granted, he doesn't dunk, like he used to, but he just really doesn't age. And Steve, would you agree or?
Well, I will. I'm going to agree on both. Let me start with Leonard. I don't know, Chris, if you can pull it up, but I don't know if you can see what his price is all year. I think this is his lowest price all season. He was 8,800 last game against the Jazz, right? 8,800. He was not under 9,000 for the past month in my game logs that I'm looking at. He was $1,000 more most of the time at 9.3, and he was up to he was 10,000 at one point. He was 10,000 at the live final. I played him at the live final at 10,000, and he's 8,300. His last 3 games against Memphis this year, he had 2 games where he scored 33 FanDuel points. Sure, that's not great, 33. But he also put up a 57 in there. If his ceiling is 60 points at 8.3, I don't care. He's a star. I am probably going to have Leonard at 90%. The only reason I won't have him at 100% because I don't like doing that anymore. Because at 8.3, compared to LeBron at 11, you're telling me they don't have the same ceiling or at least similar? Maybe not exactly. Maybe LeBron could go 10 points more. But for the almost $3,000 discount, I'm getting a little excited here, man. I just love Leonard in this spot. Love him. Sorry. As for Vince Carter, I like him too. Veteran. I'm probably going to project him at 25 plus minutes, maybe. The projections I'm looking at, I'm having a little closer to 27. I'm not sure he gets that much, but you tell me he's going to get 25 minutes at min price. Now, he's min price. We can get lots of stuff going with the rest of our lineup. I made some lineups before the show, and Vince Carter is definitely in a lot of them.
I feel like they're going to have to play him just because we know Parsons is out, and we know Tony Allen's out. So, who else can they play at the 3 that could actually be productive offensively?
Troy Daniels is actually really deep tournament.
That's a good point. He's somebody that I played on. I only really ever played him on DraftKings because I feel like you have to play those guys, those kind of dudes. So he's somebody that's very interesting, and I think a lot of people might have forgotten about him because for a while he was getting decent run as the backup 2, and then he just didn't anymore. Guys got healthy, and you never really saw him. So I think he's a guy that people probably just forgot about. Yeah.
The guy that like you said. I mean, I'm just gonna have no Ennis. I can see him get more run, but just point per minute type guy. He just doesn't really do it for me. So if I really was going crazy and I was getting a little loopy, I'd probably throw in some Troy Daniels because he has that upside, man. But, and we're going to talk in the last game is we kind of already brought up a guy in that same price range that I like a little bit. But at the powered forward position, I'm interested to see what you guys like, but I can't play Zach Randolph. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I got the blinders on or that, but he's out for me. I know a lot of people kind of really do like him, but Aldridge at 6'3", that's cheap. I mean, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Aldridge at 6'3". Power forward is at one of those positions that just kind of you can go all ranges. And I feel like it's one of those positions you can really differentiate yourself, even though there's only like 6 different plays. It's just finding that player that's going to be lower owned. And at 6'3", Aldridge, I'm assuming, is going to be higher owned. I'm always pretty bad with ownerships, but Aldridge is really high on my list.
What you think, Fuego?
Yeah. So I like Aldridge, 6'3". He's also cheap. We saw him at 7'3" a month ago. So he's also $1,000 cheaper than he was a month ago. I get it. They're playing Memphis, which is a tough D. This is a slow-paced game. It's only, I think, projected at 99.8 points total or something, which, I get all that. But I'm a GPP player, and I'm looking at ceiling, and LaMarcus Aldridge at what I consider a discounted price is definitely in play. He might be my highest rated because – or just I like this range here. I do like Randolph better than Jack. You got to get him right. That's the problem, and it's hard to do. But he's got the ceiling that I like to see, and I think a lot of people, he's a 6-man, right? So he doesn't start. I think that turns people off. So you seem to get him usually at lower ownership percentages than you should. And there was a stretch there. Let's see. Against the Spurs, he put up 44 FanDuel points last time out. I don't know if the guys were playing or not. I don't know. It was April 4th. I don't know if Aldridge and he had 16 rebounds. Holy cow. And Marcus Gasol may have been out. But either way, I like Randolph probably better than Jack does in this spot. And speaking of center, what do you think about Marcus Gasol?
Yeah, he is the guy I was waiting for. He is my favorite center on the slate, point per dollar by far. I'm gonna try as best as I can not to have 100%. I just think I just really like this. Is just he kind of sticks out to me. Do you have his ownership percentage kind of in front of you?
Yeah. What do you think they guess is?
I'm hoping under 30.
9 to 12.
What?
That's what they're. Yeah, and because it's a center position, you got a lot of good centers. Like the highest one they have projected is Gobert, who we'll talk about at 17 to 20, and then 13 to 16, 13 to 16, 9 to 12. Now these are preliminary; these will change throughout the day. But
now, do they actually have the percentage? When you run in that, not sure what you totally mean by that.
So they have the projected ownership. You know how like Chris does his projected ownerships on RotoGrinders. So same thing on Fantasy Labs.
Oh, you said 9. You said 9 to 12%.
Yeah.
I thought you meant 9. Like if you have 12 lineups, like 9.
Oh no! They project him in only 9 to 12% ownership.
Well, then I probably if I'm gonna get him under 15%, I'll have him at 100%.
I can't vouch 100%. I love Fantasy Labs. I can't vouch how accurate they are all the time, but that's what they're telling me.
Yeah, I mean, man,
I do.
Yeah, I mean that is. Ooh, that's 7,000. I mean, we've seen this guy have triple doubles, man. Like, this is a good spot for him. Like, I feel like this is more of a Gasol spot than it is a Conley spot. So, if they're gonna stay in this game, it's gonna be Paul Gasol. The only thing that would ruin this pick is if they get blown out.
Let me ask you real quick, and I know we're moving kind of long here, but so a month ago, Gasol was 8,000 versus the Spurs. He's 1,000 less. Also, what's going on in this game? Do they just think it's gonna be a tough, slow matchup, so that everyone's price low, or what? Because everyone's $1,000 than they were a month ago, and it's the same matchup. And he didn't do great. He put up 30, but that's his floor in my mind. He put up 30 the past couple times he played him, but that's his floor, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, So I'm not going to talk myself off him. I've been on him, since my last. He was actually my favorite play of the day, the Rain Man play of the day. So that's who I picked. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard that term, but yeah, that's what it was. So I just think the only thing that's going to kill this pick is if they get blown out. So that's they're -9. I mean, they're +9. So it is scary going to San Antonio, but these two teams I can see just grinding it out. So I think this is another good series, and it's just if I'm going to pick anyone in this game, it's going to be Marc Gasol.
Yeah, I was wrong. Is it only a 90-point total in this game?
No, I have it at 2. The total is at 191, and Memphis has a 91 total, and San Antonio has a 100-point total.
Okay, so. Right. Yeah, and I think that's what's driving the pricing, and I think that's what is going to drive the ownership as well. People don't want to pick people in lower scoring games. If you have 4 games on the slate and teams are projected to score 100 and one team's projected to score 90, people are going to the team that's going to score 100. And in my mind, I don't always do that. I will say, you know what? This guy's ceiling is this. I don't care what kind of game it is. It's the playoffs. Fire them up and let's roll them out and see what happens. So I just like this. All these guys that we have discussed, I like their pricing in this game for sure.
Yeah. Either of you guys like his brother?
Yes. Yes, I do.
I think he's sneaky.
Yeah.
At that price, he's what, 5'2"?
Yeah.
5.2 on FanDuel. He is another veteran that we could see step up in the playoffs. His minutes, are usually in the low or mid 20s maybe. What if that goes up a couple more minutes here, a couple more minutes there? What if, he gets a few more shots, he gets a few more 3-pointers? I do like him in this spot.
Yeah, I feel like with the center position, I probably can't play him. Like, it's just too many other ways I'm going to go. I don't hate the play, but I'm just going to have no exposure, unfortunately, and I'll probably kind of regret it, but we'll see if it works out, I guess.
Yeah, I think on DraftKings, he'll be slightly more popular, but I don't think anybody's going to go there, even on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, forget about it, because you only get one. Nobody's going to go there. But he's, it's something you mentioned about the veterans and about how they've been saving him for something. And I think Powell still has it in him to play 30 minutes. I'm not saying he will, but I think he's got it in him to do it. So if there was ever a scenario to do it, if they were saving him for something, this is what they were saving him for. And I know, that I've seen those two. They're competitive together. They're very, very competitive together. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him at 5'2". Nobody's going to play him. His minutes have been insecure all season. He's got a tough matchup against his brother, who's really good. But I've seen Gasol do some things to his brother, man. I've seen him school him a little bit down low. He can still play a little bit, so I think he's very sneaky.
Yeah, I would agree. But now we're on to the last game of the night, right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we're up to the last game. We've got the Utah Jazz, the team everybody loves to avoid playing against. That is going against the Clippers, another team that people typically like to avoid going against. Go ahead, Jack. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, we got a 200 total. Looks like Clippers are -5.5. It should be. This series is going to be probably one of the best actual NBA series. This is going to be grinded out. And I think the team that won the home court advantage is huge. And I mean, Chris Paul, everyone's going to be scared of this matchup. Chris Paul at 87 and, George Hill at 5'8" on FanDuel. And I think Chris Paul is if I had to rank the most boomer bust type play, Chris Paul is up there. He can win you the tournament. He can easily win you the tournament, and then he can just bust. But I can see this as a spot being where I gotta have some exposure to him just because of his ceiling. This is definitely his type of game, and not his type of game. Obviously, you'd rather him in different aspects. But when it comes to playoffs, his type of game, where if his team's not doing anything, he'll put it on his shoulders. And I think Chris Paul is uber sneaky. But granted, we can't play everyone, and point guard's always the toughest position for me to break down because I just love every point guard.
Yeah, Fuego, what do you think?
Yeah, I like. Shooting guard and point guard, when I make my player pools, are usually I have the most because of the ceilings and because maybe just I can't decide. But I do like Paul. Like, he's a couple $100 cheaper than Irving. He's expensive, but he absolutely has the ceiling in this game. If he put up 50 FanDuel points, I don't think I would be surprised. So when I think like that, sometimes I do like Paul. And, we already, I'm not George Hill for Utah. His price is always right, but he doesn't. I would play him. He doesn't always have the ceiling I would like, but he'll put up those games now and then. He's under 6,000. I'm gonna have a lot of combinations, like we just said. I'm gonna have a lot of combinations of point guards. Let's put it that way. I like to mix them up. But then the shooting guard position, we already touched on Crawford and JJ Redick a little bit, but those are some guys I like for sure on the Clippers side. And Rodney Hood on Utah, maybe. I always mix in a bunch of shooting guards, so if I'm not sold on Crawford or Redick, maybe I would throw him in there. What do you think about shooting guards?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with your take on that. And I think Crawford, just that veteran take, he's going to kind of come in if this is going to be an ugly game, and if Crawford's the one scoring off the bench. I like him. Rodney Hood is scary, but shooting guard you could really punt that. Chris, would you have any other kind of input?
I'm a little biased. I'm a big CP3 guy. I like him a lot. I think he's extremely talented. I like the fact that you have upside on the defensive side. It's not just scoring. He gets the assists, he gets rebounds, he gets points. He really controls the game. And what I think is interesting is I think on the other end, I know that since his injury, there was a lot of speculation when he came back from his injury a while ago about, is he fully healthy? His defense hasn't been there. I think it's going to be there. So even though it's against a Utah team that's pretty efficient, I still think that we're going to see a different Chris Paul than we've seen in the latter half of the season, because I feel like before I kind of fell off the NBA train when baseball season hit, Paul was kind of disappointing a lot. Like, yeah, once every 4 or 5 games we would put up Chris Paul numbers, but he was kind of disappointing. He wasn't seeing like the ridiculous workload that we were all accustomed to. And for the same thing could be said for Blake Griffin. I think him also. Like, we kind of saw the production. They weren't the locks that maybe they were. And I think people are going to look at this and they're going to see, it's Utah. I don't like playing teams against Utah. So I personally like Chris Paul, especially on FanDuel. He's right smack in the middle between Lowry and Irving, 2 guys who I think people are going to be all over. Maybe not so much Irving on FanDuel because of his price. But I don't think, because I feel like if you're going to pay the $8,700 for Paul, then why don't you just go up to Irving? Because on paper, he's in a better matchup, right? So I do think Paul is very interesting for sure. Tell me who else you like, though, Jack.
Yeah, no, I everything you said, man. I mean, it makes great sense. Obviously, I can tell you're a Chris Paul fan because you hit the nail on the head with that stuff. So Chris Paul is just great tournament play. If we can get him at low ownership and you're going to get, guys kind of same price, like that's what you want in tournaments. And I'm going to have shares like, Steve was saying earlier, I'm going to have so many different combos. Now into the small forward position, Gordon Hayward. I love Gordon Hayward. I get him right a lot. Like, I play him. He's had a good year for me. Anytime I play
in my qualifier win also.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, Gordon Hayward, I just love him as a player. I don't like this matchup for him. Utah is healthy. He's not selfish enough in a lot of aspects of his game. He doesn't take enough shots for me. He's too good of a team player. And on the NBA court, you love him. But in the DFS world, we don't love him because of that. So if we can get him, he's 7'3". He's going to be lower owned than those top guys. But for me, I play him a lot. Like, I'm biased on this guy. And I can't love him in this slate. I think there's just too many other ways I'd rather go.
What do you think, Fuego?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, he was in my qualifier victory. I play him probably more than I should. But we talked about Leonard. We talked about Paul George. We talked about LeBron James. Those are some big names that I think I like better than Hayward. I like Middleton a little more than you did at $1,400 cheaper than Hayward. We like Vince Carter at minimum price. So there's it's rare. I feel like that there's a lot of small forwards I like, but there are on such a 4-game slate too. There's other ones that I like, so I don't think I will have some shares, I know, but I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of him by any means. And I don't even think who's Mumbaba Muwate.
They're gonna Mama's Mute or whatever they call him. They're probably gonna have him guarding Hayward. Just he's not in play, no way. I mean, they're gonna have him guarding Hayward, but you can take a look at Joe Johnson off the bench if you're feeling froggy, I guess. But I was having an argument about it.
What about Joe Ingles?
Yeah, you can look at him too. You know, I mean, both those guys you can look at. It just depends. Like, even when we were talking earlier, like PJ Tucker's another guy you can look at too. There's a lot of kind of those ranges, but I think Vince Carter's in the best spot.
Right.
But Ingles.
Go all the way down to minimum price Carter or go up to the big guys, sure.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, you can go with Ingles. Like, I wouldn't be looking at your lineup and be like, what are you thinking? Right. It's just one of those things. It's tough. And the one thing I'll rebuttal with Hayward, even though I was saying it, is with Kawhi and Hayward, they're $1,000 cheaper. We can do a lot with $1,000 on this slate. And PML brought this up. He said on 5 nights, how many times does Hayward score as much as Kawhi and even more? And I said 1 out of 5, and he'd agree. So if this is that 1 out of 5 nights and you can get that $1,000 saving, Hayward might be a guy to look at, but it's tough for me to play.
That's an interesting
Great
point. I wanted to ask, Fuego gave us some thoughts on Hill, who I thought was interesting. What are your thoughts on Hill?
Yeah, I like him. I think everyone's gonna look at this Chris Paul defense and be scared. And at 5'8", like with him and Brogdon right at that price range, it's so tough. Like, this is gonna be my downfall tomorrow on my lineups. Like, I'm gonna be sitting there staring at point guard and just doing everything I can because I love all these guys. And George Hill is just another one of those players, man. At 5'8", I mean, come on. I mean, he's in play for me, and if I had to rank it, just for people that are still listening, you know, that type of thing, I would have to put George Hill above Brogdon, just because he's a veteran, he's been there. Everyone's gonna be scared of Chris Paul defense. You're gonna get him at pretty low ownership, and he's 5'8", and he can easily hit that 40-point mark. So I like him a lot.
I think that's a great analysis. Who else do we like here? Blake Griffin. Obviously, he's a big guy, worth talking about. What are we doing with Blake Griffin?
I am on the fade train. I'm going to have 0%.
Me too. Yep, I agree. He's 8,200. For $100 more, I can get Leonard. I know they're not the same position, but $100 more, I can get Kevin Love at the same position. And if we like Aldridge, what do I do? 6,300. We like some Ibaka at 53. We like some of these other guys. I think I'd rather pay up at other spots than Griffin. And usually I like Griffin. I like Griffin, but I think I'm not going to play him either. And he is probably going to be super highly owned because he's the only, him and Love are the only big power forwards. And I think Griffin's a bigger name for some reason, but I think he's going to be highly owned. And Derek Favors for Utah.
Is he healthy enough to get a full run in the playoffs, or are they still going to limit his minutes?
Yeah, he's healthy. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. You just never know with the minutes with him, but it is the playoffs. So if he's playing well, there's a chance he could get an uptick in minutes. He doesn't start usually, I don't think, but I don't know if he's projected to start tomorrow or not.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be scared off him because of that knee. I really feel like this is just a guy they save for the playoffs, and that's just, it's weird to think like that. The guy's 25, all right?
I want to tell you, I almost qualified the week. It was either a week or two before I qualified for the basketball, and I'll make this quick. Favors went off in the third quarter. He was going off. The beginning of the fourth quarter is going off. Like, it gets out of the game and never comes back in. And I lose a Q spot. And he was like, so that's what I'm hoping. If you play him at his price, you hope he gets hot. You hope, like you said, Hayward's less selfish with the ball. And you hope he gets hot and stays in those minutes. And at under 5,000, he would just be somebody that I think you could get at low ownership. That could maybe get you 25 points. That's 5x. So he would be in play. I'm not saying he's my favorite, but he would be in play for me.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna have some. Everyone. We all know Favors. Like he's leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouth. This year. So no one's really gonna play this guy just because of that recency bias. And I was talking with. I keep bringing him up, but he's a smart guy too, PML, and he was saying, this is another good thing. You're not going to win the tournament by being the guy the day after that plays the guy that goes off. You got to be the guy that plays the guy that goes off the day of. So
that's right.
And Favors has that upside. So I'm going to have, if I play 10 lineups just to put it in perspective, I'm going to put him in 2. So just to have that little bit of kind of leeway. But what about you, Chris? You got any take on him or?
Yeah, for me at this point with basketball, I'm on I try to play guys that I think other people are afraid to, and I think that, like you said, I think Favors definitely matches up with that. I think guys like him and Zach Randolph are the two that kind of jump off the page at me personally, and I'm not saying to play both. Obviously, you would play one in order to play either Griffin or Love or Aldridge, of course, but I think that. When I'm looking here at some of the value overall in the slate, I really don't see anything that I'd be interested in, just because I don't really see anybody that I'm confident is going to get the playing time you need. But I think that Randolph is super interesting at 55, and then of course Favors is 48. That's a significant price difference. So based on price alone, I'm not necessarily saying that I would like Favors over Randolph on any day, but I know you're big on price, and when I'm looking at price, your model what?
My model likes Favors right above Randolph.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think just solely because he's significantly cheaper, you have to like him more. Honestly, I do. I mean, am I a little concerned about his matchup down low? Not necessarily his matchup with Blake, but when you consider the fact he's going to be down low, he's going to have DeAndre Jordan. But at the same time, DeAndre Jordan's going to have his hands full with Gobert. So it's really going to, I think, as long as Favors gets those minutes, and that's why I asked if he was healthy. I think Favors is you have to. I mean, I don't know how else to say this other than to say he's kind of a lock, because I think that at 4,800 he is that much cheaper. I mean, he's cheaper than Ibaka. He's cheaper than Thaddeus Young. So, I like Favors a lot personally.
Speaking of which, what do you think about the two centers in this game, Jack? We got a juicy matchup with Gobert and DeAndre Jordan.
All right, I'll put it probably as easy as possible. If I had to pick one, it's going to be Rudy. I can't go with Jordan, and I just can't go Jordan. Rudy has had some good matchups against Jordan, but if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not playing either of them. I mean, you can look at my lineups tomorrow. Maybe I'll have some exposure on DK because they're a little cheaper, but I won't have maybe 1 out of 10. But my percentage, like I told you, it's going to be Gasol, a little bit of Valanciunas, a little bit of Tristan Thompson. And that's going to be it. I just feel like you're paying $9,000 for Gobert when you got so many other positions to go to. At $9,000, he's tough, man. And Jordan basically at $8,000. Both these guys, I just don't think they have the ceiling, but that makes some great tournament plays if those guys are listening. So, but for me, it's a no on both of them. But if I picked one, it'd be Gobert.
All right. Okay, I'm going to probably agree again. They both have Gobert, the higher ceiling for me, as he always has that super high ceiling. But when I said juicy matchup, I kind of meant just these big name guys. They're both pretty good defensively, obviously. So maybe it's a little more of a defensive, struggle. And we talked about other centers. The problem, we talked about getting the center right. That's the problem. I don't think there's not 1 or 2 or 3 centers that I'm like, yes. That's the biggest problem for me on this slate. I liked Miles Turner a little. I liked JV. I liked Marc Gasol. I liked the other Gasol. But there's no one I'm just like, oh, I love this person. So that would put these guys in play for me. Let's put it that way. But I definitely like Gobert better than Jordan, and just because that ceiling, Gobert has that ceiling, that 60-point ceiling that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I feel like for that reason alone, I think Gobert is going to be the chalk here, which I think will lower some of the ownership on the other higher priced players, at least on FanDuel.
You are correct.
the reason I say that is just because obviously he's expensive, but he's the only person that appears to have somewhat of a decent matchup at center. Now, like Jack talked about, he's mentioned that he has some interest in Miles Turner, and it's because he's thinking, or at least hoping, that Cleveland will switch up their defensive system. So people know, don't target centers against Cleveland. These are the these are like the mindset of people. Oh, I don't like to target people against San Antonio. I don't like to target. I'm not playing Jordan against Gobert. I'm not playing Valanciunas' minutes is questionable. I don't know. So the only guy that, like, you know, if you're not too familiar with the playoff edition and you're just looking at this, oh yeah, easy. Gobert's the guy, obviously. Like, yeah, you got to pay up for him, but you only get one center, and he's clearly better than all these other matchups. It's got to be him. So I think that there's certainly merit in fading Gobert 100%. Just from a lineup construction perspective, I think a lot of people are going to pay up for him just because on paper he appears to have the easiest matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. Like, that's dead on. If you're going to get that center, like we were talking earlier, and he's going to be the highest owned center, I'm fading him. And if I guess, you know, maybe we'll talk a different day, and if he goes off, then I'll just eat it. But I'm honest with my play. You know, I'm honest with my plays, and it's just one of those guys that I won't be playing, unfortunately. And I think it's going to be a grinded out series, and I'm pumped for this series. But like Steve said, it is a juicy matchup, but it's a juicy matchup in the non-DFS perspective. Right. You know, like, it's going to be a great match. These guys banging down low is going to be awesome.
Right.
But it does, you know, it's not going to correlate to, you know, the cash, in my opinion. I think these guys are just going to be really battling, and it's going to be fun to watch, but I don't think it's going to be good for the DFS world. So that's my opinion on those two.
You know what's interesting? Now you got me thinking here, going back to Favors, right? So assuming Favors gets his normal allotment of minutes, and now you're looking down low, and you got Gobert. Obviously, the Clippers, just like everybody else knows, Gobert has been hot, and he's like a huge part of their team. The Clippers know this too. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I know Blake doesn't always play down low, but Favors typically does. So Blake might have to be down there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to double Gobert down low and do whatever they can to keep him boxed out, just to keep him away. And I'm not saying that it will happen. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, which would really open up some opportunities, I think, for guys like Favors. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree and disagree. I would say if he was killing them on the boards, then they would kind of apply that strategy. But I definitely think, because, you know, Favors isn't the greatest rebounder, so they may just kind of throw those double bodies on Gobert and get him out of there and just do that type of situation. But I think they would do it once they see Gobert dominating. I think Jordan has that athletic ability to kind of hang with Gobert. I think Gobert will get the best of him, but it's a good point if Gobert starts killing the boards.
Yeah, no, I think so. Fuego, what do you think?
I think we covered it all, to be honest with you, except for the fact that Favors did have 26 FanDuel points last time out against the Clippers at that price is 5x. So, and I think that wraps up Saturday's games, and I don't think we're going to have much time to talk about Sunday, but is there anybody Sunday, Jack, you wanted to talk about, or let's talk about the Westbrook Rockets matchup or anything like that on Sunday you wanted to touch on?
I mean, like we said, like, this will be kind of quick. You know, if we went at Atlanta, Washington, if I had to kind of pick out who was huge for me, on the Atlanta side, I'd probably go with Dwight Howard. I think he's got a good matchup all series against the centers, because I think you guys know Dwight Howard and Gortat go pretty far back in the Orlando days. So, and Dwight Howard gets the best of them in all their matchups. And this is a very this is going to be Dwight Howard and Gortat are going to be going at it. So, and Mahimi will come off. So I would say Howard would be the highlight for me there. And then John Wall should just crush. So I know he'll be high priced. Maybe Markieff Morris. Everyone's going to be off him. But other than that, in this series, it's kind of hard to really pick anyone else except maybe a Bojan Bogdanovic off the bench. I'm so bad with names. How about you guys?
I think you covered that game for me. Maybe Beal, because of his ceiling. And, I mean, the next game, the Bulls, I'm guessing you like all the Bulls. I probably like all the Celtics. I probably like, it's hard for me to do it without the pricing, I can tell like players that I like, but if you tell me Isaiah Thomas is going to be one price, you tell me Isaiah Thomas is going to be a different price, determines whether I like him a lot. So I do like Thomas at home, and I like the big guys Horford and Crawford in that game.
Yeah, and the Bulls and Celtics, like the full series, I'm going to be as much as I can get of Rondo. I think Rondo is I think he's bringing it to the Celtics. I know he did not leave very well.
Narrative.
Yep, narrative. That's a good one. Jimmy, obviously Jimmy's Jimmy. He's the man.
Yep.
Rolo, you can get a little bit of him. Miro, you can. Bobby Portis started playing better at the end of the year. Like you said, Bulls, I'm going to be naming everyone. On the Celtics side, Isaiah Thomas's price is very dependent. He has a great matchup. But if they win this series, it's going to be because of him. I can see the Bulls easily winning this. And then I would say Al Horford is also in a good spot. And there's no one really else on that Celtics side. How about you, Chris?
This one question I had. I don't know if it's official, but I thought I read something on Twitter somewhere that they may put Jimmy Butler on Isaiah Thomas. I think that would definitely lower my interest in Isaiah Thomas for sure if that was the case. I mean, it seems to me. On the one hand, I was like, how could they do that? And then I was like, well, I guess it's just Crowder, and like nothing against him. He's a great player, and he's had some big games, but I guess why not? Why wouldn't you just put him on Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls, like, that's what they kind of have that mentality type thing where, Jimmy, if IT's going off, or I don't know if they'd start the game like that, but if IT's going off, Jimmy's going to be the type of guy to give him to me, I'll shut him down. He has that mentality. So I don't know where you heard it. I didn't hear it, but
there's a report here on Bleacher Report. Jimmy Butler says he's looking forward to guarding Isaiah Thomas in NBA playoffs. Won't match up against him the entire time.
ESPN. Wow.
Can you imagine
it says it won't
the
match
tilt
up
of people? Can you
Sorry,
imagine the tilt that the players will be on? The people who take Isaiah Thomas, and in the first quarter when he's matched up with Rondo, and he puts up 20 in the first quarter, and then all of a sudden Jimmy Butler covers him, and then he gets shut down, and he finishes with like 30. Can you imagine the tilt of the weight of the DFS public if that happens?
Yeah. And, Jimmy on the defensive end, like, he didn't have as good a season like we're used to, but people see his defense and, that type of thing. But when he wants to, like, shut someone down and it's in his head, like, he will attack that guy. And he is so good at not fouling as well. So I don't see IT getting him in foul trouble either. So, like you said, talk about tilt.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. All right, let's briefly go over. Obviously, people are going to want to know what you're doing with Harden and Westbrook. That's the last game that we'll touch on, and then we'll go ahead and close this up. So, what are we doing with Harden and Westbrook? Obviously, we don't know their prices, but I think we all know that it's going to be high for both of them, right?
I just have to bring up one thing. You guys are going to leave out Portland?
No.
Oh, did I skip over Portland? Well, it's only because I know how much you like Dame, so I was just like, I think we already know we liked you. My bad. Touch on it for me.
All right. Here's what I'm gonna say. Dame Lillard is gone. Okay, I should just let Steve talk because I don't want to get in on it. I'm already getting all worked up about it. Dame Lillard is a great play, guys. Again,
we're similar. I love him. You could go off on him if you want, but the ceiling is always there, and his price never changes. And you can talk if you want more.
A lot of point guards against Curry have that mentality with his size, and he's one of those guys. Russell Westbrook's one of those guys. Chris Paul's one of those guys. Like, they're not scared. They're not even scared of Curry. Like, they just they see it as a joke. Like, Damian Lillard is one of those guys. I think he's gonna have a big series, and the only way they even win 3 games is 2 or 3 games or whatever. If they win 1, it's going to be Damian Lillard and McCollum. You can tag them in together. On the Golden State side, Nurkic would be huge if he plays. He's I know with his legs, so it's kind of questionable. But on the Golden State side, man, basically the top 4. Draymond Green, I think, is in a really sneaky good matchup. Portland is so bad against the bigs and rebounding, that type of thing, especially if Nurkic ain't there. And Steph Curry, we all know Steph Curry. So this could be just a straight-out shootout.
Yep.
What do you think?
Agree. I love Blazers. I would love if Nurkic was in there, but I'm not sure about that if he's going to be. But, yes, the big guys on the Warriors. This is probably one of those games. We talked about some of the value plays for tomorrow's slate, and like the Vince Carters and the. Without looking at pricing, this is probably one of those games where I'm not going to those guys. I'd be going all the stars, the big guys in this game. And then as CK was about to talk about the Thunder Rockets, you got the two big boys, Harden versus Westbrook. Who's the MVP? Hopefully Leonard shows them tomorrow who's the MVP. But, one or both will be on my team depending on rosters. We'll use the 10 lineups again for an example. I might have 2 with both of them, 2 with Westbrook, 2 with Harden, and then the other 4 fade them. You got to have exposure to these guys. You have to have some exposure on a 4-game slate. What if they go back and forth at it? This is the playoffs. At the live finals, they faced each other less than a month ago. Westbrook had a much better game than Harden did, but would it surprise me to see them both hit 60 FanDuel points? 70? It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, especially if you can fit these guys like we talked at the live final. Like, it's not going to be – this is going to be a lot tougher fitting these guys together with this, core. So I feel like you do got to pick one of them. If I had to say one guy that I think is going to – it's always Russell Westbrook for me. He's going to – off the bench, the Rockets got the guys off the bench to kind of cover those points, and Westbrook is going to have to do everything. So OKC, it's Westbrook and all, maybe a little bit of Cantor sprinkled in. I'll have to see the starting lineups, but I will play Ryan Anderson away from Houston just because of the shooting splits and his depth perception with the Houston arena. It's pretty interesting, actually. I read a documentary on it. And at OKC, I'll have a little Ryan Anderson, but besides that, maybe some Lou Will, and yeah, it's tough. I'm not really going anywhere else on Houston and OKC besides the studs until I see pricing.
I will say one thing.
I am a Westbrook guy.
I typically have a rule. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fuego.
No, I am a Westbrook guy, obviously. And a bunch of the guys in my Twitter chat, shout out to all the guys in my Twitter chat. We were on Team Fade Harden most of the year, and I was always on the Play Westbrook team. So I have a feeling, and I made the mistake of not doing that in the final. So I'm probably more Westbrook than Harden for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And my logic, there's no secret behind it. It's simply I look at the teams, and I think that they're both valuable, obviously extremely valuable to the teams. One does everything, and the other one has a little bit of help. Westbrook does everything. They rely on him for everything. Harden got some help. Gordon could shoot. Anderson could shoot. Even guys like Capella, they're capable of doing some offense. Beverly once in a while can play. Lou Williams off the bench. They have other guys that can help. Westbrook has no help. I think Oladipo, Cantor, when Adams feels like playing, maybe him, but he's got nobody. So I'm with you guys on that. One thing I will say, and this is something I said to Fuego when we were on the phone the day of the final. I told him, I was like, listen, man, play the guys you want, because I can't heart telling him, oh, you gotta play this guy, and then he plays him and he duds. I wouldn't have the heart to look at Fuego the next day. I just wouldn't, because it's his money, it's not mine. But one thing I did say, I didn't know whether he should fade Harden or not. He made that decision on his own. I'll give him the props. One thing I did say, though, that he didn't actually listen, and he brought it up to me the next day. I said, if you're gonna fade Harden, then you gotta play Lou Williams. And so, what do you think about Lou Williams if you're gonna fade Harden tomorrow?
I like it when Gordon is starting. I think Gordon and Lou coming off the bench just cloud one another. If I had to pick one, it's always Lou. But if Ryan Anderson, or if somehow we get Gordon starting, then just fire up as much Lou as you can, because he's going to be the number one against that second unit. With Gordon and Lou coming off the bench, that they cloud each other.
Muddies is up.
So.
That's a great point. Fuego, what do you think?
I think Jack touched on it all, man. A great time doing the pod with you, Jack. We really appreciate you coming on, man. I probably did the least amount of talking I ever had because I was just listening, soaking in the advice, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, hey, man, well, you guys, I actually had this card sitting here as a joke, but play the King tomorrow. Get some LeBron. Play the King. I'm telling you, he's the top dog tomorrow, guys.
If I had a card of a Kawhi Leonard, I would hold that up, but I'm not sure what that would be.
I don't know why it was sitting there. I just looked to my side and I was like, oh, there's a deck of cards.
It's a sign. In there. All right. Before we get out of here, before we let you go, real quick, this was your idea and I like it. we're gonna have a little. Let's pick the winners of these series real quick. We're gonna go Jack, Fuego, me. We'll make it quick. Starting off with Indiana, Cleveland. Who's winning the series?
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
I'd have to go with Cleveland as well. Next one, Milwaukee at Toronto.
Milwaukee.
Ah, okay.
I'll go Toronto.
Okay. I'm going to go with Toronto also, just because I think Milwaukee is still a little young. Memphis at San Antonio.
San Antonio.
Gotta go Spurs.
Yeah, I think for me that's definitely a no-brainer. And the last one we'll do, we won't touch on Sunday's game. Let's just get through. Actually, no, I want to do Sunday's games too. Utah at the Clippers.
Jazz for me all day.
Jazz.
Oh, interesting. If the Clippers play the way they should, I think it's going to be the Clippers. The question is, are they going to do that? I'll go Clippers just to disagree because we haven't had much disagreements on the pod. I'll go Clippers.
I'm going to go Clippers too, mainly because I'm going to tell you the truth. I think that this is a game where I think home court advantage is going to play into account. I think if Utah had the home court advantage, I'd prefer them because they play significantly better at home. But I got to go with Doc Rivers. It's not even about Chris Paul or Blake. It's about Doc. I got to go with Doc. He's the winning pedigree.
Hey,
right,
it's a reason for 4-5.
Go ahead.
There's a reason they're 4-5, man. That's tough.
That is tough. No. That's
right.
Definitely tough because they're a much better. I respect Utah. They're a much better team than what we've seen in the past few years. What is it? Atlanta at Washington, Jack.
Washington all day.
Fuego?
Yep, my Wizards are going to get it done.
Yeah, man. I hate the Hawks, and I'm being completely honest. I just don't like them. It's like they either win or they get blown out, and it's not. I just don't like them as a team. I really don't think they're that good. I really don't. Let's see. Portland. Portland at Golden State.
Golden State.
I know it kills you to say it, but you gotta. I get it. Fuego.
I got to take the Warriors.
Me as well. I don't think Portland's quite there yet, although I think Dame's going to put on quite a show for us in the series. Chicago, Boston. I think I know where you guys are going here, but I'm going to let you say it.
I think I'm gonna get some agreement. I'm gonna go with the Bulls, man. Let's get it.
I'll agree with you. I'm not the Siege. I'm not CJ. I'm not from Boston, so I'll take the Bulls with you.
Yeah, buddy.
I gotta go Boston here, man. I do. I got to. I'm sorry. I got to. I gotta go Boston. All right.
You ever heard of Michael Jordan?
What was that?
You ever heard of Michael Jordan?
Yeah, you mean Jimmy Butler?
Yeah.
All right, Oklahoma City at Utah. Last game.
Tough one.
I'll
Houston,
tell you what.
Sorry, I said Utah. Houston.
I want to pick last just because I want to hear you guys, but I'm gonna take the Thunder because I'm contrary and I love my boy Westbrook. I do think if I had to put a ton of money on it, I would probably go with Houston, but I'm going with Thunder.
Do you know by any chance who's favored?
Houston.
Houston, yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. That's a tough one. You know what? I'm gonna say Westbrook shows that he is the MVP and wins the series.
I'm going with Houston, man. Their offense is just too strong, man. In Oklahoma City, they really got. I mean, on the defensive end, they got Roberson, which I respect Roberson. But then what are you gonna do about Lou Will? What are you gonna do about Gordon? What are you gonna do about everybody else? I gotta roll with Houston there. Hey, Jack, it was a pleasure having you on, man. I had a great time. We went longer than I thought, and it just went by. It was smooth. It was quick. I couldn't help. We were just having fun. I wasn't even paying attention to the time, man. Really, really appreciate it. I think you did awesome. Fuego, you too, man. It's always great to have you on. You're a regular here, so it was nice to have you two on there. I could see you guys have a good dynamic. You obviously had a good time, and you connected a little bit on the final, and that's awesome to see, man. For me to be sitting here on my show with two live finalists in 2017, that's just awesome. I think it's awesome for the listeners to get a chance to hear the experience and hear the way you guys think, as opposed to how maybe they think. And I think that there's definitely a lot of value that we got from this podcast, man. I appreciate it, both of you guys.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks again, Jack.
Yes. All right. For those of you guys watching on YouTube, please hit that like button. It means a lot to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Of course, you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow. If you're listening on iTunes, please give us a review. It means a lot to us. Also subscribe, of course, on there. If you want to hear, see, or if you want more of Wining247, if you want more Jack, you could obviously follow him on Twitter at JK Hendrixson with an X instead of a CK. And of course, you can go to RotoGrinders. I think he's doing the podcast with PML for Siege's tournament package. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yep.
It's great stuff. I know Fuego has also worked with Siege a little bit in the past with some of his products, so it's definitely, I know it's helped him a lot. So definitely, man, it's a great idea to go over there, especially if you're new. Honestly, if you're experienced, it's probably even better because they could really connect with you on a more real level. So really just wanted to push that. Definitely check him out. He's also on Grinders Live every now and again, which is something that's free. You can catch Jack from time to time. So if you want more Jack, you know where to get him over there. As far as Fuego and myself, if you want to read some of Fuego's stuff, he's writing the baseball stuff over here at Daily Roto Sharks. Don't forget to check out the cheat sheets on Daily Roto Sharks. They're free until Monday for baseball, and then that's it. It's going to pay. So you got a couple days to win up some money and pay off the rest of your subscription over there. And don't forget, you want to join the movement, hashtag Sheet Squad. If you do well based on the NBA playoffs, I want you to tweet Fuego. I want you to tweet Jack here, and I want you to show him some screenshots. If you did well playing baseball using the Sheet Squads, of course you know to post it on your Twitter with your screenshot of baseball winnings with hashtag Sheet Squad. Anyway, guys, for Jack, for Fuego, for myself, it's been a blast. I had a great time, and as always, good luck.
Peace.